Lost Art with Andrew Cox, retired Master Gunnery Sergeant. thelostart.podbean.com. Get some merchandise and help support the podcast in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Now on all major podcast platforms. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be a guest, tell your veteran story, discuss your veteran business or organization. Email The Lost Art with Andrew Cox at gmail.com. Andrew Cox, a Teal Valhalla Project Ambassador. See the project story at tealvalhallaproject.com. Thanks for tuning in. Please enjoy the podcast that's giving a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox.
Today's episode is brought to you by TrumpShirt.com. TrumpShirt.com is a veteran-owned business where 100% of the proceeds goes to disabled veterans and veteran organizations. Support your veterans by purchasing a shirt at TrumpShirt.com. Use the promo code TLA and get free shipping. That's TrumpShirt.com, promo code TLA.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we'll be having a My Veteran Story with Marine veteran Brian Henry. But first, I want to take a second and give a shout out to the Teal Valhalla Project and their incredible work in honoring our fallen heroes. I'm honored to be a part of their team and represent them as a Teal Valhalla Project Ambassador. I encourage you to visit their website, tealvalhallaproject.com, and see what they have going on. Don't forget to go to our website, check out what we have, and also click on that merchandise tab, go in there and get you some cool gear and help support our mission. To all the listeners out there, thanks for tuning in and continuing to support us and getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. All right, with that, I have Brian here. Brian, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, AJ.
Awesome. Hey, well, welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here. I'm excited to hear what you have to say. So let's kind of just start everything at the beginning. Where you grew up and what drew you into military service.
So I grew up outside of Philadelphia in a town called Media, Pennsylvania. I think what drew me into the military, my father was a Marine reservist during the Korean time frame. So very, very brief time in the Marine Corps, but so I was exposed to it a little bit through him. My older brother actually got a ROTC scholarship to Penn State before me, a couple of years ahead of me. So really for me, it was when I was figuring out what I was going to do, where I was going to go to college. I was aware of the ROTC programs, so I applied to a bunch of them. I got a bunch of them, but I selected the Navy ROTC scholarship at Penn State.
Nice.
And then pretty quickly, once I got to Penn State and the orientation, it was all being run by the Marine midshipmen, the Marine option folks there. They were the most impressive of the group. And I pretty quickly said, okay, I'm gonna change from Navy to Marine as quickly as I can. So I applied, made the switch over to become a Marine option, and then began my Marine Corps, training while going to school in ROTC.
Right. And then, so you did 4 year at Penn State?
Yeah.
Okay. What did you get your degree in?
I got my degree in administration of justice. I started out in engineering, but pretty quickly I was like, man, I don't know if I really like the engineering. And I also kind of had the sense that I'm going to be going into the Marine Corps. So I ended up switching over to administration of justice.
Yeah. That makes sense to me for sure. Yeah. Okay, so at this point, you get to the end of your graduation, and then kind of walk me through how did you end up doing all of your training in the Marine Corps and your entry?
Yeah, so I got we start off, I went to officer candidate school between my junior and senior year of school. So, went through officer candidate school, got done that, got commissioned as I graduated, and then went to the basic school for, the first 6 months of officer training. While there, about halfway through the program, you get to pick the MOS that you want to go into.
Okay.
And it's really, and it's how you're ranked in the class at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my instructor was a Captain Emmerich, was a tanker himself. And there was only one tank slot available in the top third. I could have taken it when my pick came up. I could have taken the tank slot, and I kind of thought about it for a second because I knew I wanted to be infantry.
Yeah.
But the one tank slot, I was like, that could be it, drive around tanks, whatever. But there was a guy right behind me picking who was prior enlisted, second lieutenant. He was prior enlisted tanker. And
Oh, I
so I
see.
was like,
Yeah.
oh, you take that. I'll stick with infantry. So yeah, I went infantry out of the basic school.
Very nice.
And I think also at the time you get to pick where you want to go. So I picked the West Coast. And we went, following the base school, you get a infantry officers course for another 3 months, and then out to the fleet.
Right.
But yeah, I checked into 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines out in Camp Horno.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great place there. So you're with 3-1. You're going to be a platoon commander at this point. So kind of walk me through your time at 3-1 and what'd you experience?
Yep. So I checked in. The unit was up at Bridgeport. Actually, they were finishing Bridgeport the winter phase, because I think it was in March, May time frame. So maybe it was summer, right? But anyway, I check in. I get assigned to Lima Company, which at that time, this was early in the MEU rotations. We were the mechanized company, the Amtrak company. And I checked in there, and that's where, not too long after that, is when the guy who introduced us, Mark O'Laughlin, Sergeant Major O'Laughlin, he later checked in as Corporal O'Laughlin, checked in as one of my first squad leaders. Yeah. So
very nice.
I was blessed as a platoon commander. I had 3rd Platoon, Lima 3-1, and one of my other squad leaders later on, Al Silva, he ended up being drill instructor of the year. So I had a drill instructor of the year. I had Sergeant Major O'Laughlin to be, as 2 of my 3 squad leaders. So I had it pretty good as a second lieutenant, learning
I'm
how all this stuff works. Yeah.
I'm sure they took care of you too. So that's good. Yeah, for sure. Okay. And what were some of the now did you go on because when I interviewed Sergeant Major O'Laughlin, he went on a lot of MEUs and deployments and stuff. Did you partake in all of that as well?
Yeah, so the first float that O'Laughlin and I were in the same platoon, that was a Westpac. It was actually a great one. Very lucky experience in that we sailed out for 6 months. We ended up, we hit Hong Kong, Philippines, Korea, and then Australia. In fact, we were on our way to Sydney, and they made us, they basically extended our stay there because it was U.S. Australian Friendship Week. So we spent like 10 days of liberty in Sydney, followed by a little bit of training, and then 7 days of liberty. And the ARG split up, and we did 7 days in Cairns, our small ship, the LST. So 7 more days of liberty. So it's 17 days of liberty in Australia.
Wow.
And then we came back early. I think something was going on. I can't remember what the crisis or something was happening, and they brought us back a couple weeks early. So we had a truncated 6-month float that included a heck of a lot of good liberty ports. and good training.
Yeah. Definitely nothing wrong with Australia and hanging out down there. So going on a float and being out, you're a platoon commander. So from your perspective is going to be completely different than my perspective as an enlisted guy. What were some of the things that you were seeing from your officer side as you were on these on the floats and deployments?
Well, one thing I always think about is the difference between the Navy and the Marine Corps. And you see it starkly in the wardroom, right? So Marines officers eat last. Simon Sinek book, Leaders Eat Last. But that's in the culture of the Marine Corps. And here all of a sudden we're in a wardroom, and they call Marines up to work in the wardroom to help staff it when the Marines are on board. But now you have like Marines and Navy guys serving you food sitting down inside the wardroom. I always thought that was just a weird thing that the Navy does. That's kind of against, kind of what the Marine Corps motto is. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Particularly when you see a Navy guy send back the eggs for being too runny or something like that. You know what I mean? Like they're at a diner.
Oh wow. Well, I don't think Marines send food back. Is whatever we get, hey,
No,
we just chow
exactly.
down
Yeah,
on
we were good. Yeah.
it.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it was, you planned out training, what you could do on ship for the time that you're on ship. You tried to do things, working out, whether it's extra, staying fit or doing what you can do. We were on an LST for that first float, so very limited space.
Right.
But try to stay sharp and be ready for the next thing you're going to do. It was an interesting float because I actually on that float, we were in Team Spirit,
Mhm.
and we did that on that Team Spirit. There was a couple helicopter accidents. The first one of 40, and actually our Mew pulled into Okinawa, and then they took us off the LST, threw us on the LHA because they were going to put another unit on the LST for Team Spirit. So
Right.
for a brief time, our whole unit, Lima Company, got moved over to the LHA, the Bellawood, and so I got put in with a stateroom with 3 helicopter pilots.
Oh, wow.
I was filling the 4th rack there, and it turns out a helicopter crashed off the deck.
Oh,
And
wow.
I didn't realize at the time, but later when I got back to the ship, realized that one of the pilots was my roommate for about 3 weeks in the transit over there.
Wow.
But we
Wow.
also
And that,
we also witnessed the CH-53 crash right in front of us with 5th Marines on board 1-5.
oh, no kidding.
Charlie 1-5. So India and Lima Company were kind of straddling a valley,
Hmm.
and the helicopter crashed right in between us. Like we saw it fly over, we saw it take a hard turn, bank, and run right into the ground.
Wow.
And that
Was there,
had my college roommate on it.
no kidding. And
Yeah.
no survivors on either one?
No, that one survived. There are a bunch of survivors. In fact,
Okay.
there's guys that keep together there's a Facebook site, Remembering Pohang. And there's a bunch of, you can see people talk about it. They recognize like the anniversary of it every year. But I think
wow.
about 19 survived. India Company guys were closer to the crash than Lima. We were up a little bit further up on a hill.
Mhm.
A number of the India Company guys were going into the burning helicopter and pulling people out.
Oh, wow.
And they saved about 19 people.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, that's really
17.
good.
I think 17, something like that. 17 or 19 died, and 19 or 17 lived or survived.
Wow.
With a lot of burns and everything else. But
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. Saw 2, and that was all on the same float.
on the same float. Yeah, that was a wake up.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know it was my college roommate who crashed. He was a platoon commander with Charlie 1-5, Darren Bell. But until I got back, and then one of my buddies who knew him as well told me, when I got back to at the end of Team Spirit a few days later,
Right.
I found out. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, that was interesting.
That's amazing.
I remember getting on a
Yeah.
helicopter. Our first time as a unit getting on the helicopter right after that was interesting. I remember the Marines, all of us having just seen that happen, and then getting on one, a couple weeks later for the next exercise was interesting.
Wow. Yeah, I could see that. Everyone's nerves really high.
Yeah.
Probably not really wanting to go on it at all.
Yeah.
Totally understand that.
But you got to
Wow.
do it. The leader's got to do it. You got to just punch through and,
Yeah.
and make, yeah.
That's right. Lead from the
Yeah.
front. Yeah. I like it. Okay. So after that deployment, you come back. Did you stay with Lima 3-1, or did you end up
And I had a
moving?
great opportunity. So I got back. We're coming back from that deployment, and my company commander, there was one slot at Ranger School for the battalion.
Okay.
It was an officer billet, I think, but and I was like, I'll go. So it's funny when you're going through infantry officers course, at least back then, they had a competition during that training for a couple seats to go to Ranger School. But I remember back then thinking to myself, I've been in school for 6 months of the basic school, 3 months of IOC. I'm not going to go to Ranger School, right now. I want to get out to the fleet and start being a Marine officer. But I got this opportunity coming back from deployment, and I got selected to go. So a few months after we got back, I headed off to Fort Benning for Ranger School, which was a great experience.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that experience. I mean, I imagine everyone that I've talked to that's gone through all those courses, Ranger School over there, it's a very challenging course.
Yeah. I mean, it was a gut check. It was interesting. I don't know how much I learned tactically. Like I think the infantry officers course does a fantastic job in the basic school, patrolling, land navigation, like all of those types of skills. But it was a good gut check of what you can do endurance wise, just going through limited food. You got one meal a day. Like when you were out in the field on a patrol, which the patrols would last for 10 days or something like that. You got one MRE a day for 10 days.
Wow.
And I remember going there, because I had buddies, a friend of mine had gone and we had talked about it. So I knew what to expect. So I was in the best shape. Like, I mean, I was doing, you have to do, when you first get there, they do some fitness tests. Like you have to do pull-ups and push-ups and stuff like that. And if you don't pass, you get recycled right away. I remember flying down to Quantico with another Marine from 1st Marines, another officer. And I can't remember his name, but I remember him getting recycled from just the push-ups. Because like if you can't do, I forget how many you had to do. You had to do 70 something or something, but they had to be like, and if they didn't count them, like if you didn't go all the way down, they wouldn't count it. And then people would get frazzled and not complete it. And they would immediately then have to recycle for like a few weeks until the next class started and try again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, when they get recycled like that, do they stay there and like you do in recruit training type of deal? You just continue to work out and try to get ready.
Yeah, they're kind of like just waiting around doing working parties and stuff like that. And Ranger School is interesting that there's no rank really. I mean, everyone's a Ranger cadet or whatever going through the training. Rank is not, you're not wearing your rank. I'm pretty sure I don't think you wear your rank during the training.
Okay.
But it was good. It was a gut check. I mean, it was interesting. I was not jump qualified at the time, so when you would jump into different places, and as it was called a leg ranger, you would get trucked out to the LZ when everyone else was going to be jumping in.
Really?
To start the patrols, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, but I mean, it was definitely some long days, long patrols, very little sleep at times. I mean, it was definitely a good gut check of knowing. I think the purpose of it is to estimate what you're going to go through in potentially in combat, where the deprivation of all that stuff and just being able to think on your feet, handle stress and do all those things. And I think it does a great job of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. And then how long was that school again?
That one is 9 or 10 weeks long. It's got 4 phases. Okay. You're at Fort Benning, then you go to the mountain phase, and then you go to the swamp phase in Florida, Eglin Air Force Base, Florida, and then we were out in Dugway, Utah for the desert phase.
Oh wow! I didn't know they went out there. Yeah. Very cool.
And then following that, having been there, then I was able to go to jump school. So immediately following Ranger School.
Oh, nice.
I was able to then go to jump school. That was kind of one of the carrots that, for me to go. I was like, all right, if I go to Ranger School, I'll get to go to jump school.
Right.
Yeah. So I did that.
And how was jump school for you? Was that, I mean, jumping out of planes, what did the people say? Jumping out of a perfectly good airplane?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense is what people say. So how was that for you, like personally?
I mean, it was great. I enjoyed it. It was funny coming off of Ranger. I think I lost. Like I said, I was probably in my best shape ever getting there. I probably went to Ranger School weighing about low 200s, and I easily lost 35 to 40 pounds at Ranger School.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's a heck of a program.
Graduation. Yeah. And then, of course, you then put all that weight back on pretty quickly. Like at jump school, which is more of like a schoolhouse where you can go out at night and do things. Ranger School is, I mean, you got a couple hour break a couple times throughout that 9 week period.
Right.
But jump school was, much more relaxed than Ranger school. There was a guy in my class, another guy from Penn State that I knew. It was fun. And the jumping out at, once you get past that initial fear part of it or whatever, and do it once or twice, it was good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So after jump school, you go back to 3-1.
Yeah. So, and then this is a good story. So my roommate back at 3-1, Jim Jaffer, he was the adjutant. So back then in an infantry battalion, they would always they'd tab one of the returning first lieutenants to be the adjutant for the second float. It wasn't a school trained adjutant.
Okay.
And so I'm away at Ranger school, and when I'm done right before graduation, I check in with my roommate, and who was the adjutant, but he worked out a deal with the battalion commander where he would be the adjutant just for the post deployment and prior to the workup. So like the admin period for the battalion when they're back, he would be the adjutant for that, but then they would replace him and he would go be an XO of a company. Someone else would be the adjutant. So I'm at Ranger school getting ready to graduate. I'm talking to him and he said, "Oh yeah, they're getting ready to pick the adjutant." And it was between me and this one other guy. And I was like, there is no way I can be going through what I just went through at Ranger school and then go be the adjutant. And
yeah, it'd be a little
luckily,
bit of a letdown.
yeah, luckily, I ended up becoming the XO of the boat company, India Company 3-1.
Oh, nice. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And now, did you go through the boat training and stuff like that down? What is that, Coronado?
Coronado,
Did
yeah.
you do all that?
I did.
Yeah.
So when I became the XO right after Ranger jump school, get back to the battalion, became the XO of India Company, and was there for the whole workup with India Company and the small boats and all that. We great unit. One of the cool things I thought about that is that as Marines would check into the battalion and they'd go through the one shop, and they basically ask them what kind of swimmer they were. And if they were a first class swimmer, which oftentimes corresponded with being a pretty good athlete too, they were typically just pushed across the door to India Company. So our company was just jam packed with just stud Marines.
Oh yeah,
stud athletes, just great people. That was a fantastic company.
Wow, very cool. And you went on a float with them as well.
Then we deployed. Right? That was Desert Storm deployment. So we went out. We sailed out of San Diego as part of the 5th MEB. So we were going to be a MEU anyway, but then we went out as a Marine Expeditionary Brigade. So the 5th Marines, they attached 3-1 on with the 2 battalions from 5th Marines to make up the 5th MEB.
Okay.
It was supposedly the largest flotilla out of San Diego since the Vietnam War.
No kidding. Wow.
And we left in December. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't even know that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And then you floated all the way over to Kuwait then?
Yeah, we did. I think we swung through Hawaii. We did some training exercises out and gotten ready. Actually they did not fully combat load when they loaded the ships. So I remember we pulled into, I think it was Oman, and they had to offload to then tactically reload and get ready for war. Right? Yeah. So
that's wild.
Yeah. So I think they did a full offload and then reloaded in more of a tactical, the way they want to be ready to have people coming off the ship.
Right.
We thought that, and we were getting briefings all the time, and we thought that we were going to be, the first story I'll tell is we were the boat company. 1-9 was out there as well as the MEU. So they were the MEU that was preceding us. They had to stay in place, for the war. Then we showed up. So there were 2 boat companies out there, 1-9 and us. And I remember hearing a talk of maybe we'll do a 2-company boat raid of Falaka Island, which was a heavily defended enemy. The Iraqi had taken over Falaka Island. There was artillery. There was all kinds of stuff on there. And I remember there was only one reasonable landing beach. So it's,
Right.
we're thinking there's no way they're going to send us in rubber boats. But there was talk of it, and we're like, well, I guess, if we got to do it, we got to do it. But it never came
Wow.
to be. I think 1-9 actually had to, at one point, had their boats on the ramp waiting to get the launch order, but the launch order never came.
Oh, huh. That's
So
pretty wild.
then it shifted to, I mean, as it was, we were then being told, okay, we're going to do a helicopter-borne assault across the beach. We were part of the amphibious, the Feint, that basically
Mhm.
tied up all their forces along the coast, which later led to the end around that the Marines and the Army did. But we were going to be the lead helicopter-borne element of Fifth Med. The first helicopters flying over a heavily defended beach, landing behind them, and then fighting our way through. That's what we were preparing for and anticipating and getting ready to
Right.
do. That never happened either. Eventually we did go ashore, but we went ashore. There was a task force Troy that was basically just making noise and trying to maintain the footprint of all the people who had snuck off to the east
Mhm.
as they maneuvered out and came around and enveloped them. They kept in place this like Task Force Troy, which is basically trying to simulate the division still being there, even though
Wow.
they had vacated and kind of shifted way to the east and getting ready for what ended up being the ground assault.
Right. Right.
So we
Wow.
flew into Task
Really
Force
neat.
Troy kind of in more of a mop up, and it was, I mean, I think we were on the ground for not much more than the 100-hour war that it was.
Oh, really? Wow.
And then we got right back on ship, reconstituted, and be ready as the Mew again for whatever the next call might be. But I remember Desert Storm was kind of this buildup of, okay, we're going to war, and a lot of anticipation, and then it was kind
Mhm.
of it was not much for us. I would say that
Yeah.
most
It's kind
most
of a
of the yeah
kind of a letdown whenever,
yeah, a little bit. But I
after
mean,
it. Yeah.
we didn't lose people, and yeah, and
Right. Oh, yeah.
good
Yeah.
result. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then did you hang out there off the coast
Yeah. We
for a
stayed.
while after?
So it ended up being almost a 10-month deployment. Yeah. Yeah. We didn't know when
Hmm.
we were coming back either. So, normally it's 6 months. We left in December.
Right.
I think we got back sometime in August. So yeah, we stayed in place as the Mew for other things. In fact, I remember, did you ever do a Mew deployment or on board
I
ship?
I did not know.
So if you stay on board ship for so many days, I think it's 45 days, you get 2 beers. So if 45 days at sea consecutively, everyone gets 2 beers. So they'll have like a Steel Beach picnic and break out some actual beer. We had back-to-back beer days. We were at sea for over 90 straight days.
Oh,
Just
wow.
just out there, spinning. I think a couple things happened. There was I think it was a storm. Um, I forget where. Like we had to go. I mean, there was actually an embassy situation where we had to go be ready if we had to do any of the embassy related security.
Right.
There was a couple pop up things that happened during that time, but we stayed out there for all the way till August before coming back.
Wow. That's a long time to be on a ship.
Yeah. But I mean, the alternative, I had buddies that were over there in the desert for the whole buildup, that whole Desert Storm
Mm,
part. We showed up right
yeah.
at the end on ship, went in for a few days, got back on ship. So, I mean, on ship, you're lifting weights, eating 3 meals a day. We were playing poker every night.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So after that deployment, where did you end up going?
So I got orders. This is interesting. I remember at one point the monitors communicating with me, and they were thinking about sending me to MCRD, I think Paris Island. And I was like, look, we don't know when we're getting back from here. We had no idea when we were releasing. So he didn't send me I didn't get orders. and I eventually got orders to Coronado to teach the small boat raid package. Which, I think having gone through that package, it the only people who went and did that job were people who had been through that training. So I went right from when I got back, checked into Coronado, and became the assistant branch head, and then eventually branch head of the small boat raid course.
Oh,
It was LFTC PAC back then. Now it was EWTG PAC later.
oh, I see. And
But,
how was that? Did you enjoy your time there teaching there?
that was great. I mean, that was 3 years of schoolhouse. It was an interesting schoolhouse because we trained all the Marine units on the West Coast that had to go out as a MU boat company. So we would train the coxswains, the navigators, and the leaders of the company, and then the whole company through this course. Oh, and the swimmers, the scout swimmers. So the cool thing, I mean, being an instructor, there was two captains, the branch head and the assistant branch head, and then an instructor cadre of almost all guys who had some boat or recon experience, and most of them were drill instructors themselves. I mean, so it was a dream job in terms of location in Coronado, spending a lot of time out on boats or on the beach. Other than the late night training schedule, oftentimes because we would do raids be ready to do raids after midnight. Get home at 4 a.m. or whatever. But other than that, it was awesome. It was a great experience.
Wow, very nice. And then so you did 3 years there, is that, or two or three?
3 years there.
3 years.
I put on captain right before I checked in there.
Okay.
And then 3 years there, and then I got selected for amphibious warfare school. So I went back to Quantico that's the captain level Marine Corps course.
Right.
A lot of the other services. Some people go to advanced infantry, Army school. AWS is great because you get all these captains from all these different MOSs all come together, spend, I forget how long that's like a year long, 9-month, 10-month course.
Oh, wow.
Where you develop a lot of great relationships with your peers that eventually you're going to continue on in leadership in the Marine Corps.
Right.
And then I got selected for 2-3 was my next duty station.
2-3. So school, do you think that schoolhouse for your captains going back, do you think that's an accurate what you need to learn or whatever?
Yeah, I think because it's getting you ready for like battalion level staff and above, actually.
Right.
You're doing everything, how to write operation orders for a battalion.
Right.
And larger. It was pretty all encompassing, yeah. And the infantry guys, they had you would go off and do things within your MOS from time to time. So they would, like, we went out to 29 Palms and did a bunch of training, infantry related, all the infantry officers out there doing more infantry related specific stuff as well.
Wow, I didn't know they did that. That's really cool.
Yeah, like calling in the air and aircraft and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So then you said you went out to Hawaii. What unit was it out there you went to?
2-3.
2-3.
2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, which have since been disbanded, I guess. They no longer exist.
Correct. Yeah, I think so. They'll come back eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah.
As most of the units do.
Yeah. I showed up out there, and it was cool. I went to 2-3, where two of the company commanders that were there already were with me in 3-1 on my first deployment.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of like a back together with a old home week. But I took over Echo Company 2-3.
Okay. Very nice.
Yep. And
yeah, go ahead and just kind of talk through your time there and what experiences you had and stuff like that.
the interesting about Hawaii, 3rd Marine Regiment only has 3 battalions, or did at the time. So you were on a much quicker deployment cycle. You would go for 6 months, come back for 12, go for 6, come back for 12. So we went out, I got there, picked up the company, and then we ended up doing training. Training in Hawaii is interesting because it's definitely a lot more limited than 1st Marines and the MEU. I mean, you got all the focus, ammo, shooting ranges, all that stuff handed to you, and then you get out. Like 3rd Marines was not quite that way, and you're begging and stealing, just trying to get out there and get training.
To all the listeners out there, if you're struggling, you need some help, you can always reach out to the VA. You can dial 988, press option 1. You can also text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on that chat icon. Any of those options are going to be able to put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But one veteran life loss is one too many. I care about you. Brian cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. With that, Brian, one last time, thank you to all the listeners. Stay motivated. Change your socks.
Yeah.
All right, let me stop this recording. Stop.